This whole thing keeps getting weirder and weirder, right? And to some, it's catching people by surprise what's going on with Baker Mayfield. But to those of us who have been paying attention, A, and B, not willing to lie to ourselves about this situation, I really don't think anything that's been happening here is surprising in regards to Baker Mayfield because this is kind of what we thought would happen, or at least along the lines of what we thought would happen, which is, hey, getting traded to Carolina could be chaotic. And I think I said it literally, said it in a video I released before he was even traded to Carolina, was that, hey, if he gets moved to Carolina, that could be a terrible situation for him because one, the coach is probably going to get fired. And two, that kind of instability, that kind of personality and that stability, like none of this offers you anything to prove to anybody that's going to make them want to keep you as a backup. And the truth is, Baker Mayfield's career as a former number one overall pick is over, right? You hit different stages of your career. And the part of his career where people are going to think of Baker Mayfield as a former number one overall pick, that's done. He is now journeyman Baker Mayfield. Why is he journeyman Baker Mayfield? Because at the very least, he's going to be on his third contract, his third team. His third team in 2 years. That's very journeyman-like, right? He is now seen and compared to guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jacoby Brissett, Marcus Mariota, Geno Smith. These are the names that Baker Mayfield's name belongs in. He's no longer looked at in that pool of maybe he could be a starter, right? Jameis Winston is somebody who's still kind of in that area, even though he's quickly getting himself out of there, right? He's no longer second chance guy. He is dude on his third team. Like straight up, that's who he is. And that means that his career trajectory is now different. And now it's about how he responds to that difference. And if he's mature enough to handle it, or quite frankly, it might not even be up to if he's mature enough, if people are willing to bet on him that he's mature enough when they don't have to. Right? And that's the question. When you get down like this in the NFL, you need somebody who has a relationship with you to vouch for you. And who is that? In a position of power. Who is that? Like, is Freddie Kitchens still in the league? I feel like that's somebody who might be willing to vouch for Baker, but are they going to really listen to that? Right? So maybe something like that. But when these things happen, you can look at it with any NFL player. It usually goes, that player usually ends up signing with somebody they have a relationship with. The problem with Baker was that when Hugh Jackson got fired, he trolled Hugh Jackson. So he has no relationship with anybody on that staff, right? No real relationship that he could go back to and lean on to get a job. Now, Hugh wasn't going to be the guy because Hugh doesn't even coach in the NFL anymore. He's at Grambling. But still, you kind of alienated that whole staff when he did that, when he pulled those stunts. So you alienate that staff. Even though he is still friendly with Freddie Kitchens, he also did throw Freddie Kitchens under the bus in 2019. So I doubt he has very many friends on the 2019 staff. And then you get to the 2020 staff where he should have somebody willing to give him a connection. That's the Browns. He just violently left this regime and everybody on the coaching staff. So he has no connections. And this is the problem with a dude like Baker Mayfield. When you burn bridges at every stage that you have been at, you better be one great quarterback. Because when it comes down to your time to fall, nobody's going to reach a hand out. And that's what I think could happen with him. Now, I think on talent alone, somebody might be desperate enough to take a shot and think that they can fix him. But I also wouldn't be surprised if nobody decides they wants to take a shot on him at this point of the year. Maybe in the offseason they give him a workout, but at this point of the year, they don't want to bring him in. I really wouldn't be surprised. Now, knowing my luck, he's probably going to get signed by the time this video goes up. But again, I go back to this. When a player gets released in the middle of the year, they usually sign with somebody that they know. They usually sign with the coach or somebody in that coaching staff with the coach that's a great relationship with them. Who can you say that with confidently about Baker Mayfield, knowing his history with coaches? Because every coach that he has had, on some level, he has thrown under the bus. He has alienated, right? He talked about all 2020 about how bad Freddie Kitchens was at his job, how wrong things were in 2019 because of the coaching staff. You think that rubbed off well on Freddie Kitchens? You think that's a dude who wants to extend his hand to Baker Mayfield in a time of need? Maybe, but I doubt it. Who puts his own, like he would have to put his own reputation online again for Baker. I don't think he does that. Guys who are less talented tend to get more opportunities than a dude like Baker Mayfield just because they treated people nicer, right? When Taylor Heineke hits the waiver wire, there's a bunch of coaches that say, I like Taylor. Hey, I had Taylor over here. Hey, let's bring in Taylor. Let's give him a shot. You know what I mean? Or you have guys like Jacoby Brissett who have gotten chances, but they keep getting more chances because they leave an excellent impression on every coach that they've ever had. Can you say that about Baker Mayfield? And now we end up here where this is kind of a ploy for him to try to get that 49ers job now that Jimmy Garoppolo's out for the year. And I just don't think this is going to work, because if Baker Mayfield's camp has proven anything, is that they're not really perceptive. They're not really aware of the perception that they have. Like, that's the one takeaway I have from this whole situation over the last 2 years, is that the people around him are not the most aware of how he's perceived. And it feels like they look at Baker Mayfield like a lot of his fans do on Twitter. And from every conversation I've heard from people in his camp, like, it seems like they believe in the Baker Mayfield that you hear about from the people who love him on Twitter. But that's not what the rest of the league sees. The rest of the league sees what the quote-unquote haters see, which is a dude who kind of looks out for himself, a dude who doesn't have the greatest reputation for being the greatest teammate, a dude who it seems like his teammates don't really like that much, and that's not a backup quarterback in the NFL. And if they think that Kyle Shanahan, and let's remember, when Kyle Shanahan was in Cleveland, and I'm not comparing Baker Mayfield and Johnny Manziel to person, but what you do have to understand is that the same people who never liked Baker Mayfield tend to be the same people who never liked Johnny Manziel, right? This is about people's reactions to the personality types of these two guys, not necessarily what these two did, because Johnny Manziel was much worse. He was literally like in and out of rehab. Like, he had a lot more problems going on outside of football than Baker. Baker didn't have those issues. But that still doesn't change the fact that the same people who don't like Baker are the same people who don't like Johnny. And you want to meet a Hall of Fame hater of Johnny, man, it's Kyle Shanahan. He hated Johnny. He quit his job because of Johnny and ended up in Atlanta because of Johnny. You think this is the kind of dude that's going to take a chance on a dude like Baker Mayfield? I would doubt it. A coach like Sean McVay, is he going to take a chance on a dude like Baker? I would doubt it, because you look at how things went with Kevin Stefanski. You know, you run the same system, and by the time he left the system, he was openly saying how he didn't fit. So why would you sign a guy to play in a system that he just said he doesn't fit? And you're still trying to get Odell Beckham, which I doubt they're going to have any shot in getting him back. But I mean, also, you have a guy, what I'm trying to get to is that this quarterback also has a toxic reputation among wide receivers. So if you have any wide receivers of note, they're not going to want to bring him in. They're aware of what he has done to certain wide receivers. And when wide receivers talk about Baker Mayfield, it's obvious that that's the kind of quarterback they don't want to be around. It ain't got nothing to do personally with him. It's just he does not have anything that a backup quarterback needs. A starter, maybe, but he's not been playing remotely well enough to be a starter. And quite frankly, he's not been good enough to be a backup. Carolina even thinks so. And Carolina is one of the worst 3 teams in the NFL. So my question to all the people who are writing these articles about how teams should sign Baker Mayfield to start, one, like, I don't think you're in touch with reality, because this dude just got released from the Carolina Panthers because they did not believe that he was good enough to start for the terrible Carolina Panthers. What makes you think a good team's going to think he's good enough to start for them? He was 35th in QBR. Does that sound like somebody you signed to be a starter? I think a lot of people are still looking at this through the lens of Baker Mayfield, the former number 1 overall pick, but those days are over. He is now Baker Mayfield, the journeyman. Baker Mayfield, the guy with the worst QBR in football. Baker Mayfield, the guy who has had a below 27 QBR out of 35 in the NFL the last 2 seasons. Baker Mayfield, the guy who got into multiple disputes with his coaches and GMs over the summer. Baker Mayfield, the guy who seems to never play nice with any coaching staff he's ever had. Maybe John Dorsey throws him a bone, because that's the only guy I can see that he hasn't burnt a bridge with. Is John Dorsey, or maybe Alonzo Highsmith in Seattle. Those are the 2 guys. Those are 2 guys I feel like he could reach out to and get a job if he needs one. But I don't know if they take him in at this point, because he's no longer number 1 overall pick, Baker Mayfield. Guy who went 11-5, Baker Mayfield. That perception of him is dead. It's dead, and I think people need to accept that. The perception of him now is of a losing quarterback who has a terrible QBR, who could not start over Sam Darnold and Philip P.J. Walker, who nobody else wants. So why would anybody break their back to sign him? That's what I struggle with this whole discourse, because it seems like everybody's still looking at this like it's still the summer, like he still has prospects, and he don't got much. So that's my thoughts on it. Sometimes in life, it's better to not play, right? Like, if you are not ready for an opportunity, maybe, one, you should evaluate why you were not ready for an opportunity that you were trying to get desperately. But also, you have to look at things in life, look at opportunities and say, is my preparation going to meet the opportunity? Or is this situation somewhere where I can even be successful, where it's likely I'll be successful? You can't just take every opportunity because it's in front of you, especially once you're at a certain point, right? When you're first starting out, if you're an undrafted free agent, you got to take whatever job going to sign you. I get that. But if you have any bit of choice and agency in the matter, you really have to evaluate your options, and you can't take the one that gives you the biggest role automatically just because you want the biggest role possible. You have to think, is this going to benefit me? Because Baker Mayfield took the big role, knowing good and damn well that that big role probably wasn't going to work out unless he became a different quarterback. And now he's here, jobless, in year 5, when he thought he was about to get paid. He's the Isaiah Thomas of football. Straight up, he's IT of football. And not the good IT. I'm talking about short little IT in basketball. Cavs had him. But that's my thoughts on that. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.